If you find a relationship where you can start having adult tantrums, that's a sign you feel safe. When you in childhood have to push everything down and be good and like make sure you're like treading on eggshells, don't upset the apple cart, Nick's allowed that part to be seen. And it's allowed me to know that this is my stuff. I need to take responsibility for this relationship to be healthy and be fostered. I need to heal the wounds that are stopping me from true intimacy, because I've done that my entire life. And like allowing those parts of me to go, we deserve to be loved. Like we deserve to be seen. Like there's nothing wrong with me. Like that's been a game changer for me.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
We are so excited and we're so grateful that you guys are willing to sit down with us. It's actually kind of hard to find couples. First and foremost, it's kind of hard to find couples that are, I would say, like actively working on healing their shit together, right? It's one of those things that a lot of times we find people that, you know, one person is very much in the process of trying to heal and go through all of their stuff. And the other person might be supportive of that, but they're not really doing a lot of work themselves. Sometimes it's the complete opposite, where somebody's like, yeah, I'm not interested in that at all. And they're, you know, already starting to have problems and issues. But to have two people that are totally going through the process of trying to heal and evolve and do all these kind of different things together, or at least simultaneously in the same space, is really exciting. So we're excited to be able to chat with you guys and learn more about you.
Right back at you.
That's amazing.
Well, let's just dive in and get started, because I truthfully don't know a whole lot about your guys' story in regards to, I mean, you can literally just take us through the journey of how you two met and what that process looked like. We don't know how long you guys have been together. And then also I want to get into the journey of not just how you've gotten to the point where you're at today, but I mean, for us personally, it's the type of thing where a lot of times, you know, we've been together for like 12 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we are completely different people than when we met. And we have no idea how, I mean, we do have an idea how we got to where we're at today, but it's kind of this crazy, you know, who would have guessed that we would have ended up in this place that we're at, depending upon, you know, all the different circumstances. And so I'm just excited to hear about your guys' story and where you're at today.
Amazing. So
I go first?
Well, okay. How we met. So I'd not long moved to Nottingham, which is in like the Midlands of the UK. And I'd had probably my biggest breakdown. I'm doing bunny ears, I'll probably explain later, but my life had just gone, I'd like set fires everywhere. I was working out in New York, living my Instagram best life. And yeah, just all of my, I hope I can swear, came to the surface. Can I swear? Can I check? Get consent?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Part of me is very happy by that. So yeah, like everything came to the surface. I couldn't avoid anymore. And I came back to the UK. I got offered a job in Nottingham doing recruitment, which is what I knew, and I just needed a bit of stability. I was like just in a very dark place, like £20,000 worth of debt, like newly single, like mid-30s, everyone's getting married, having kids, and like I moved to Nottingham just for a bit of stability. But it was the perfect time for me to kind of start digging into some of the work that I've been avoiding for many years. So just before I met Nick, it's when I discovered the term codependency. And I'm a child of an alcoholic, grew up around addiction and codependency, and it was like light bulb moments for me. I just was obsessed with podcasts, books. I was, you know, kind of in my little shell, digging a little bit deeper into this work, and kind of, yeah, having these kind of real light bulb moments. And we were part of the same social group, but hadn't properly connected yet, had we? So we were both singers in bands with the same bandmates, but two separate bands. And I'd gone to a jazz festival on my own to see some of these mates. And we'd seen each other, I think, at like a Sunday roast, hadn't we? Awkwardly, like you were there really early and I arrived really early because it's what I needed to do to feel safe. And it turns out you did too. So like we're always the awkward ones there first, like, oh, you're right. And we sat next to each other at this jazz fest and we got chatting, and you said to me, I saw you on Tinder the other day. And I was like, oh, did you? I didn't see you, so you must be out of my age bracket. And Nick was like, to be fair, he was like, you're 10 years older than me.
I am.
But yeah, that made us giggle, didn't it? And then we just like got sharing like dating war stories, like horrendous things that have been happening, and just connected on a friend level, didn't we? And we went on a mate date to an art museum. I'm not even sharing this. But like at the time I hadn't got my nose ring properly. And I'd got like a fake one in, hadn't I? And we were looking around this art gallery, and you were one side of the room and I was this side of the room, and my nose ring like popped out and fell on the floor. And they'd actually got these like big like old school TVs on the floor, hadn't they, playing different videos? And like I was on my hands and knees crawling around in the dark trying to find this nose ring. Meanwhile, you were like,
well, I'm across the room, like looking at this woman, and I'm like, she's so into this exhibit. Like, she is so digging it. So it was like, I think that was the moment I was like, I really like this person. Like, she's my kind of woman. Not knowing, of course, all she's doing, looking for a nose ring.
It was so beautiful because, like, I think, you know, we probably weren't each other's types, but we connected initially, didn't we, on just an energy level,
yeah,
and a safety level. There was just something. You were very like, I don't know, you were just very intelligent, but good banter, in a nice way. And yeah, we just kind of started off as mates to begin with, and that was will be coming up 6 years ago.
So at that stage, I was just starting to train to be a psychotherapist and counsellor, and I was in therapy myself for about the 4th or 5th time, but for the first time in a kind of proactive way. There wasn't anything wrong in my life. There'd been plenty of things wrong for like most of the sort of 40 years before that, some of which I'm more than happy to dip into. And when the friendship kind of developed into a relationship, we were both, you know, working our jobs. And then, of course, a couple of years after, well, less than, probably just over a year and a half.
Yeah.
The pandemic hit, and that affected everyone, didn't it? To varying degrees in all sorts of different ways. And I think I was working all the way through it, and you were working part of it, weren't you?
Yeah.
But you really dove head on into a number of different things, and I was starting to question really whether therapy and becoming a therapist was really something was missing inside me that I couldn't explain. Like cognitively, it seemed like a really good idea. And I was definitely looking for a heart-led career for the second half of my adult life, but it just didn't feel right. So it kind of unfolded, didn't it? That we discovered coaching in around about the same time during that period. It was
that having to sit with yourself and all your thoughts and having more space. And yeah, it was where I think, you know, I definitely ramped up my self-development and joined like group programs and group spaces, as well as hired my first life coach. And yeah, we both just got a real flavor for what was possible with coaching, and just seeing the impact, first of all, on mindset. I think I want to kind of start by saying our safety within the work was very much about cognitively processing stuff, like mindset work. And yeah, it was a very difficult time, wasn't it, for everyone? But I think very special in a sense. It feels almost hard to say that in a way, but a very special time that catapulted our life and just took us on a completely different trajectory. I'm not sure
It's totally us.
Yeah.
Is it? Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people that, you know, we've talked to a lot of people that kind of, it was, you know, the pandemic and everything that went down. It was such a life-changing experience, obviously, for all the reasons that we all know about. But then I think behind the scenes, it really shifted and changed up a lot of things for people. It did for us completely. Our life completely changed. Like, I mean, not even a 180. It was just like a completely new experience after the fact because of all the ripple effects that came from that experience, right? And all the stuff that it brought up to the surface and all the different things that we had to start thinking about and processing and navigating. But then internally, and the work that we were doing during that time period, like some of our not some of, truthfully, our deepest internal work came during that time period. Like it was a perfect storm in some sense, where we were able to dive really deep into the work that we were doing with our therapists, and just had some of the most profound healing that we've ever experienced, all because of the perfect storm that the pandemic kind of created.
Yeah.
Jess, I want to ask you, you said that you were in New York and then you moved back to the UK, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was when you talked earlier, you mentioned that, things just kind of weren't going the way that you wanted them to go, or was there some sort of, because I always think about our life tends to fall apart and then we figure out how to put it all back together, right?
Yeah.
What did that look like? Like, what was that process for you where things were just kind of starting to, I don't know, and maybe I'm, projecting, maybe it wasn't falling apart, but.
No, it was. Catastrophic. So how do I explain this as succinctly as possible? But I was like an absolute incredible mask wearer. I prided myself on being strong and resilient. I mentioned earlier, alcoholism was a struggle within our family. Codependency was a struggle in the family, and I was the elder sibling, so I was the caretaker to my younger sister, kind of the emotional caretaker, sometimes physical caretaker to parents. And that very much just kind of fed into every area of my life, right? I didn't know back then, but it was, the codependency was bleeding into relationships. I was getting involved with people that I could rescue and fix, and really kind of any dynamic and relational dynamic, which meant I didn't have to look at my own shit. And it would be like, oh, you've got a problem, I'm going to swoop in there and kind of sort that out. And I was quite successful in my career, so I got to kind of put all my energy into that. So my recruitment life, for the most, I worked with education, and my working day would start at 7 a.m. and it would end at like whatever time at night, where I'm still filling bookings on the couch. And I didn't have any time or space to think about anything else at all, other than, oh God, there's a crisis with the family or work-related stuff. And I had started to struggle with my mental health just before New York. I was in a job where my sensitivity was shamed quite a lot. I was really struggling with the family addiction at that point, and the weight was just unbearable. And I was starting to have panic attacks. It was the first physical sign of my body being like, meow, meow. And I was shamed for it. It was like, you're too emotional to be a manager. You need to stop crying. And I got signed off work and put onto antidepressants for the first time, which for me and parts of me was so shameful. I was always told, don't take meds, run, go to the gym, forget about it, kind of just push through. So that was the first sign of my body being like, something is terribly wrong here. And then I moved out of recruitment of the education sense into this global events company where I was doing C-suite recruitment for the UK, New York and Miami. It was an amazing fresh start. And they sent me out to New York for a few months to recruit for some C-suite level jobs. And I was working in Manhattan with my desk looking at the Hudson River, and I was living in Brooklyn with a stoop, and I was like, oh my God, on Instagram, but the cracks were every single day. I remember actually in my time out in New York, just obsessively listening to Sia. Her lyrics were really speaking to me, and I privately was having that experience of just sobbing my eyes out, drinking so much red wine. I'd got into cocaine again. I made friends with all the right people out in New York, where it's work hard, play hard. And yeah, I was starting to emotionally explode. Me and my partner, who was back in the UK, were just not speaking. We just stopped communicating. There wasn't even big conflict. It was just, we just stopped communicating. And yeah, there was one particular day, actually, I don't know if I've even shared this on a podcast. I don't even know if we've talked about it. I was at the bar of my favourite pub that was just around the corner. And I used to sit and watch EastEnders, which is a big show in the UK. And they'd be like, what are you watching? And I was just there with my headphones on, watching UK TV with my beer. And I'd obviously looked really down, and I'd started to have like suicidal ideation at this time of my life. And next thing I knew, this incredible lady's plonked herself next to me at the bar. And she's just like, hey, how are you? And starts chatting to me. And turns out she was a counsellor. And the barman had rang her and said, I think you need to come in. There's this girl who I don't think's okay. And I couldn't see it. I was so used to not going there, but the fact that this human just like landed next to me in this bar and was just, I burst into tears, and we ended up having a deeper chat about everything. But I ended up resigning from my job out in New York, got nothing to go to. Someone had triggered me and I just went, fuck this. And I did this a lot. It was like relationships would end, I'd walk out of jobs, and it was just like, I'm off, bye. And I like walked into this conference room. I said, I'm resigning, but I'm staying out in New York to this date. And like, I packed my bag of all my coffee cups and I got my shoes like dangling out of my bag. And I remember walking across Brooklyn Bridge, like looking back at the building that I worked in, like, what the fuck have I done? Like, oh my God, how am I going to explain this to everyone? And the shame of like having to tell my family that like I'd walked out of this job where I was meant to be going to Miami to recruit for a whole office after this. Like, I've just thrown this away. But one part of me was holding that fear and shame, but there was another part of me that was like a fire embers, that was like, something bigger is coming for you. Like, this is all meant to happen. And I got back to my flat and I literally like made a whole website like in one night. I was so fueled with this like passion for like, no, I want to help people now. Like, this is my mission. And I've got like a tattoo of Brooklyn Bridge on my arm now that says anything's possible, we're in this together underneath it, as a reminder that I'm okay to have difficult times. Like, I'm okay to be in the darkness. But it very quickly hit me in the face. Like, I had to come back and face everything. I had to face my partner, and our relationship ended. I had to literally live on my mum's couch with like a suitcase with my whole life in it. And yeah, it was the time where I finally had to face my childhood. Like, the responsibility that I'd been carrying for my whole life of being the one that shoulders everyone's emotions and everyone's crises and everyone's pain and everyone's shame. And it was my body that was giving up. I'd got gut issues, like stomach problems, as I said, panic attacks, emotional explosions. Someone called me day and night when I was in New York, and I was so offended. They were like, you're literally like day and night. And like, now I can look back and I can see what they meant. I was like masked, smiley, and then the next minute it was like, so yeah, it was the most difficult time. And like I said, like the first time where I really started having suicidal ideation of like, I just can't be here anymore. And now what I know by that is that it wasn't that I wanted to die. I didn't want to die. Parts of me just couldn't bear living anymore. Old conditioned parts of me just couldn't handle this life anymore. So yeah, it was like the biggest like of my whole life. But I wouldn't change any part of it at all.
It's so crazy how that happens, right? I mean, it's everything, because we can relate so much.
Thank you for sharing all of that. There was like, I feel like so many people are just going to take a breath and feel like, okay, I feel seen themselves from hearing you describe that so deeply. Like, that was a big thing. You went through so much with that. That was, I know I cut you off, but like, that was such a transformation. And I know at the time, like, transformation is not the word to use when you're there, but just everything that you went through and every like courage that you had, every step across that bridge. Just the fact that somebody saw you in that bar and sent that, and you had the courage to keep going, to change everything. And again, at that time, I'm not calling it courage at that time. I know it. I don't know your experience, but from my own experiences, it feels like you're just like gasping without a lot of desire to even try to gasp, really. But how, like, I can see myself in that. And I really feel like so many people are just gonna be like, oh, you know how sometimes when somebody opens up to you so beautifully and you have that connection part where you don't feel alone, and then it makes you feel possible too. I feel like you just like helped so many people with that, and just like possible, you turn that into possibility. And thank you for sharing that. That was really, really beautiful. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And I know it's terrible, but thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for reflecting back, because I've got a part of me that's very well versed at that script, that does it without emotion. I can detach my emotion from my story sometimes. And when I do get to share it and someone reflects back, like, it really helps it's really a corrective experience for parts of my system inside, parts of me, to honor, actually, yeah, shit, that did happen to you. Like, it's not just a story that, you get to share. And I think, as we know, shame can't survive being spoken. And there's been so much shame and so much shame about the pain I caused others during that time. Because I can have compassion for myself now of like how I behaved and all of that, whilst also hold that regret and all of the complexities and the nuances of like how I'm probably perceived from those people from my past still, where they're like, how the fuck is she a coach? Because I'm frozen at that time. But, that's the work, isn't it? That is the work. Yeah. And just thank you for hearing me.
Nick, let's share some, I want to hear about because not everybody has those experiences, but those moments where life just starts to fall apart and you don't know what's going to happen and things are really, really scary. And then somehow you find your way through it. What did that look like for you?
Which time?
Right?
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And actually what Jess just shared there so beautifully was one of the first things that I think really bonded, because I really resonated with my own version of her story. I grew up in a faith household as a Catholic, but a very shame-based version of that. There was love, don't get me wrong. There was lots of good things around my upbringing, but I think just the younger versions of me feeling constantly that one wrong move could lead to sin and eternal damnation is quite a lot for young shoulders to carry. On top of that, my dad taught me as a primary school teacher, and what I took away from that experience was a version of my father as charismatic and well regarded and happy, and at home exhausted, quick to temper. And there was kind of physical discipline both in the family home and at school, which was still okay in the UK back then. And the third thing that had a really big impact on me going into adulthood was being a really talented, I'll say soccer, because you guys are in the States, a real soccer player. So between the ages of 10 and 19, I played with and against some of the greatest soccer players in my generation. It was what I thought I was going to be as a person. When all of that came crashing down as a young man, what I know now is that I'd already become a people pleaser with no sense of self as a young man. My entire validation was based around what other people thought about me. And therefore, as I kind of came away from the dream, if you like, of professional soccer and just about had the academics to get into university, by the time I was 23, I'd said yes to marrying someone I'd known for 12 weeks and got into a very emotionally damaging relationship where I was the victim of coercive control and some physical violence. And as a man, that was something I was never modeled how to feel my emotions. I just bottled it all in. And I just thought, if I can just be better, she will be happy and we will be okay. But of course it doesn't work like that at all.
It doesn't?
Yeah, I know.
That's my whole plan.
So when I kind of when she left me after a couple of years, I was in London, sort of mid-20s. And again, on the face of it, looking like I was building a kind of a decent life. You know, I was working in the travel industry. Most of my clients were from the States. But behind the scenes, I was numbing out. I was using a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs. I was struggling to get into work. And when I was at work, a lot of the time, I'd be high on weed. I don't think I really was sober for quite a while afterwards. And then the big event for me was September the 11th, 2001, when I had 3 groups flying out of JFK and what happened with the Twin Towers. And that event, standing in the office high, seeing this, it was just so, I couldn't make sense of what was happening. And what I did was, again, this is why I resonated with your story so much. I left work. I sold my house. I took all my money out of the bank and I returned to the family home and sat in a room for about a year. It's too scared. I couldn't make sense of any of my experience. Until the money was dwindling. And eventually at 27, I asked for help for the first time as a man. And a year of therapy kind of got me to begin to open up and speak my truth for the first time, that these are the things that happened to me. This is who I am as a man. It became, from that point onwards, an ongoing journey that I'm now 23 years into, and no sign of getting to an end point, because I've discovered there isn't an end point. We're constantly evolving and changing and healing and growing. So yeah, that was kind of the big event for me. And there are so many parallels, even though mine happened earlier in life and longer ago, that I think we really connected with our own versions of those experiences. And that kind of, I think that we've, I don't know anyone else, I haven't met anyone else where so many things were quite similar.
I think as well, both of us being highly sensitive, I think we really connected on that of feeling deeply feeling human in this chaotic world that makes no sense. I think that really,
it did, right,
really connected us.
It did. I think me owning my sensitivity as a man's become a real kind of source of my power. It's something which I had to hide for a long time and mask to be a version of a young man through puberty, adolescence, and into adulthood that I was being modeled around me, which was that kind of really unhealthy, misogynistic strength, stoicism, just stuff that I didn't identify with back then, but became in order to survive the environments that I grew up in. So yeah, it's I don't know.
Go ahead, babe.
You just, that one part of what you just said is I didn't agree with back then, but had to adapt to survive. Chances are you've heard us talk about merino wool because we love it, and you're going to hear us talk about it again. We decided it was really important to us to start bringing in and wearing natural fibers that were good for our health. Woolly Clothing offers 100% merino wool, natural fabric, which is a healthier choice compared to the other synthetics that are often made with plastics. I've been wearing their underwear, their athletic tees, their shirts, and I stole Craig's pants because those are my favorite things to sleep in. Don't worry, he went and got himself his own pair. They're durable, they have tons of versatile styles, and it also really helps when you're trying to wick away all that moisture that they're also odor resistant. They're easy to take care of and also eco-friendly. So head over to stephandcraig.co right now, click on the Woolly link and enter the promo code Steph and Craig and get 15% off of your order. If you're ready for natural fibers that feel good on your skin, help regulate your temperature, keep you dry, don't stink, and on top of all of that, look really good. Go pick yourself up some clothes from Woolly now. How long have you been using those same nonstick pans that are all scratched up and scraped, not cooking well, and putting off those flecks of that non-scratch surface into your food? It's terrible for you. Do you still have those? We started getting serious about not only the food that we were putting in our bodies, but what we were cooking that food on. So we switched to American-made stainless steel cookware by Heritage Still. Heritage Still is a family-owned business located right here in Tennessee. They have been building great stainless steel clad cookware for over 40 years. They're versatile for all cooktops. They're oven safe, easy to clean, and they have a lifetime warranty. We switched out all our pans, and I am so glad we did. I love cooking with our Heritage Still pans, and I love the fact that when I'm cooking for my kids, my family, I have the peace of mind to know that it's safe for them to eat the food that I'm making. Head over to stephandcraig.co and click on the Heritage Still link, and make sure you enter promo code Steph and Craig to save 10% on your order. Start cooking healthier for you and your family today. I feel like just that sentence right there sums up so much. Like, I don't agree with it, but I had to, like, this is what I adapted to in order to survive. And that just hit so hard. You saying that right there in that moment. Now, what were you going to say before I cut you off?
You said that it's like a superpower for you now, your sensitivity. How does it look today versus, you know, back in the day when you had to hide it and cover it up and put on all of these masks of everything that, you know, oftentimes everybody has to do? What does it look like now?
I think it looks for me now like I think it's an ability to understand that we are all incredibly complex individuals, that we're full of messiness and contradictions. And I feel that viscerally myself in my own experience, but I see it, especially in the men that I work with now, trying to make sense of it in their own way, in ways that are meaningful to them. And I feel that for me, I like to lead with that because it's what makes me who I am.
I think it sets you apart. I'm going to be biased, right? But like, I think having that sensitivity as a coach and as a space holder, that intuitive nature, that natural ability to like attune and sense, I think it's amazing. And just some of the feedback that you've had from some of the men that you work with of being like this role model energy, this like safe, they often use the word safe. And I think that's where you really do stand in that superpower of showing men it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be a deep feeler.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, my darling. You're welcome.
Nick, do you find that it's hard sometimes because the subconscious part of ourselves, like the subconscious, I'll just speak to rather than trying to articulate it in what I have found for myself is that those masks that I used to wear, especially around the masculinity, the misogyny, all the things that we have to do in order to fit into all of these different boxes as men, I have tried to set so many of those down because of how, truthfully, just how toxic they are, how shitty they are, how shitty they feel. I don't like the way any of that stuff feels. I don't like the way that, seeing it portrayed in society and in culture and all of these kind of different things. I just feel like it's so detrimental to everybody involved, to the people that it affects, to the, the individual person as well, trying to pretend to be something that they're really not. But yet there's still times when I butt up against situations and interactions where I won't even have cognitive awareness and it will just slip right back in. And then I'll have to like catch myself. It's almost like I see myself, not like totally out of body or anything like that, but suddenly I realize, oh shit, I'm pretending to be that formulaic dude, man kind of thing that I don't align with at all anymore. And I don't want to perpetuate any longer, but yet somehow it just happened, right? I just found myself in one of those moments or one of those experiences. And I mean, it's the weirdest things, right? It's like talking to somebody at the store or having a conversation with another guy or whatever the case may be. But they're just these random moments where that part of me will suddenly appear out of nowhere and catch myself. I'm surprised by it because I feel like I've done so much work and I've processed so many different things. And so do you find that happens still? And if so, what's that process look like for you?
The best way I can describe it is when I was recounting some of my past and and there wasn't that sense of self there, it would just be kind of being different versions of myself to fit whatever environment I was in. Now I think kind of we present different versions of ourselves in different environments and around different people, depending on the nature of the relationship. And when we're choosing that, I think it's okay to decide to honor those people and the environments that we're in, and alter ourselves in a positive way. For me, it's the self-awareness of catching myself when it's like, oh, I've become a mask that sense of self isn't there. I'm not wearing the mask. The mask has caused me to abandon myself and become somebody that I used to be. But I think the self-awareness is important, but the biggest thing actually is the self-compassion, because for a long time, as when I first started doing this work, that self-awareness would lead to self-judgment. And I would berate myself for not being good enough, because again, that's part of my narrative. So it's easy for me to judge myself about as a man when that happens. Building self-compassion allows me to actually just accept that this is what's happened and try and love myself and all the parts of me through that process. And try and be more consciously aware moving forwards when I'm faced with the same situation or the same type of person or whatever's caused that glitch, that conditioning to resurface again. And I think to normalize that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I totally agree with that. I'm glad you said it, because the normalization of it, right, where the distinction between, because I do the same thing where immediately it's just like, seriously, I'm doing that thing again, or I'm repeating that all of these things. And it happens all the time in our relationship too, where I have awareness of a behavior that's really toxic and really terrible. And I'm like, okay, I can see it. I'm going to change it. That's never going to happen again. And then it happens inevitably again. And I've learned over the years where Steph will ask me sometimes to be like, I don't remember the last one, but we have it pretty regularly where you'll ask me to, oh gosh, there was one, I wish I could remember it. So it's a good example, but stuff in our relationship where she's like, please don't ever do that again. Or like, an example, gosh, that can't get an example in my head. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but the whole idea is having awareness of like an action that you do causes something, will cause her to feel something negative. And it's not just like, oh, I don't ever want to make her feel something negative, but it will trigger a part of her that she's trying to heal, a wound, something like that, right? So then it's like very clear to me where I'm like, okay, cool. I don't ever want to do that again. But I've learned over the years where it's like, cool, I hear you completely, and I'm going to do the best that I can to not do that again, because undoubtedly it's going to happen again. And if it does happen again, and when it happens again, please point it out and I'll rectify it immediately and do the best that I can. But that self-compassion part, because you both talked a little bit, Jess, you talked a lot about the shame of feeling like you failed in New York, and how do I go back, and how do I communicate all of these things? And how did you guys navigate, or how do you navigate? Because again, it's not just a one and done type thing, but how do you navigate that process of going from carrying the shame and the guilt and the remorse and really thinking poorly of yourself to getting to this point where you can cultivate a sense of self-love and compassion?
Oh my God. Great question. And it's something that we're still living every single day. Like I describe like my shame, the easiest way to put it from like my childhood experiences is like the gap between what I should have got as a small child, as a teen, and what I actually got. And sometimes that gap feels so huge. And I've filled that gap with lots of different kind of addictive behaviors and a lot of emotional eating and like trying to fill that void. And that shame gets built in there as well. This like, but I now know that shame is trying to protect me. And I know you guys have talked IFS on the podcast, right? Both of us leaning into IFS and the parts of us that hold the shame. What I heard there earlier was you two beautifully communicate to each other when something's activating and triggering, and you listen to each other, and like being able to communicate vulnerably. That was the biggest thing for me, is to not keep that locked in, because that's what my shame wants me to do. Like the biggest thing about growing up in a house with addiction is don't talk, don't feel, don't trust, right? It's very secretive. That shame wants me to keep quiet. So being able to find that voice as a result of some of the other work I was doing, to then be able to be like, whoa, okay, I now know how shame shows up behaviorally. I know how it shows up in my thoughts. I know how it shows up in my body. And being able to catch with that self-awareness of like, wow, I am in the swamp. I am like floundering in the swamp, and being able to kind of help each other out just by being able to say, I'm in the thick of it. Like I've lost myself. Like I'm going down a rabbit hole here of self-worth, doubt. So yeah, I think it's been a beautiful mixture of so many things, of like exploring, understanding, building awareness, being able to cultivate that vulnerability and communication skills, and then just being able to, like Nick said, build that self-compassion and release that shame, finding tools that we've been able to release some of it. So like the breath work, for example, like for emotional release, tapping, like not just making this a cognitive process, which is what my parts love. They're like, don't you dare go in the body, don't you dare feel anything, but actually building safety in the feeling as well, and the releasing of it. But my shame's going to be with me forever, and I getting to know each other's shame and building love for the parts of us that show up on the regs.
And also trying to ground ourselves in questions that are meaningful to us. Like, so for me, how old do I feel right now is a really important question that if I remember to anchor in, can really support us. So in terms of, say, attachment styles, I lean more towards being anxiously attached. And the younger my part is, the more it doesn't understand that I have the ability to self-soothe. So this happened, I'll give you an example, a few days ago, where I was trying to like do a reel on Instagram and the tech isn't playing. And I'm literally out of nowhere, almost in tears, because I can't do the thing that I want to do, just like a toddler is. And a toddler, it doesn't have anything other than the ability to self-express in that moment. So when I did that, like you're going through something in that moment as well. Yeah,
I'm sat there like, I've just realised it's my dad's birthday. I haven't sent a card. Do I want to send a card? We kind of low contact, like, and I'm having just a complete experience, sat right next to him. And Nick's like, oh, can't do it. Like, help me. What would you do? And
I know. And then you're like, well, I'm just navigating something else that I wasn't aware of at the time. And then my toddler's like feeling just rejected and wants to scream even louder. And we're recounting this like, quite reasonably calmly. And this is the kind of thing we're talking about when we say we're navigating the different parts of us that show up at different moments, often at the same time. And I think that awareness of well, I'm 2 right now.
And I was. So what happens for me? So when you were in shame, that was your very young toddler. When I'm in shame, it's my angry teenager, right? And I thought I was doing the right thing. I was like, well, I'm communicating that I'm in a swamp right now. So you keep telling me to tell you what's going on inside. So I'm telling you what's going on, and then you're still not happy. So then she was like, and like that's when the finger pointing starts. Like she is raging, and because that's how she protects the shame. She's literally the holder of all my shame, and she's like, I will fight you to the death. She's like, I don't need you anyway, get out. Like, and it just goes like 0 to 100. And this is with a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching, a lot of self-awareness. And we do have those moments of like, how the hell are we here again? But we did celebrate ourselves, because we can come back together quicker. And it was about just seeing the signs of the growth, right? Of like, Shelby, she's my angry part. Shelby, named after Peaky Blinders here in the UK. She just needs space. She needs Nick to bugger off, like go away and let me calm down. And like now you know that, don't you? Now we've been able to find these ways of being in these moments the best we can, messily. But like, you can go off. I can be tapping somewhere furiously, like, why am I always looking after men? And like, but like you did the whole like, oh, how old am I right now? Yeah. The question I ask myself is, who am I talking to right now? Because I wasn't angry at you.
No.
I was screaming at my dad. And like Shelby in that moment was like, why the fuck am I always having to caretake for men's emotions? Like, I'm sick of it. Whereas you were like, I just want some help. But it was just two very different attachment styles, two very different needs in that moment. And it was just, it's probably just a little 1% shift, but we just have to find compassion in. Sometimes it will blow up. Sometimes our resilience is so low. And as long as we can learn from it and we can come back together, maybe quicker than the last time, then that's the win.
But this is the thing, and the flow in the end part of that particular example is like, I take myself away, even though so much inside my body is telling me to do the opposite and continue to reach out and ask for my needs. But actually, I'm then having to kind of take myself on a journey while I'm feeling that to pick up my toddler and tune into like my actual adult energy and talk to them and soothe them. And by doing that, I soothe myself. And meanwhile, you're calming down and talking to Shelby and telling her, well, I don't want to speak to your experience, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you have a corrective experience because I don't behave like your dad would have behaved and keep going at you.
Yeah.
And then we can come together by me just sitting there and waiting for you to come back to me. And then we're both in as adults again. Do you know what I mean? That might sound completely
It might
nuts
sound like we've like,
if you're listening to this, but like, that's how we navigate what goes on for us.
You guys definitely sound crazy, and we're right there with you.
Like, you're describing our process on how we go through so much of that.
I'm so excited to hear about it. I'm so excited to hear you guys share that, because first off, you get an award. Like, if there was an award for like relationshiping and navigating that process together, that's what that looks like. You guys nailed it.
Yes.
And that's something that we can relate to so freaking much. We have those moments all the time where it's like, sometimes we'll be able to articulate it and verbalize it. Like, okay, I'm very much dealing, like you're talking to 4-year-old Craig right now. And this is what 4-year-old Craig needs. And Steph does a beautiful job at times. And then sometimes it's both of us being so activated and triggered in a part of us that is wounded and hurt, and very much needing the other person to show up in that loving, compassionate way that they need for whatever purpose it might be, right? It might be, like Jess is saying, it might be get the fuck away from me, or it might be like very much hold me. I need some love. I need some attention. And when we're both in activation, trying to learn how to support each other, support ourselves, navigate that gray area of like, there's times where we'll be talking about something or something will happen, and it's like, I got triggered first, so you got to hold on to yours and put yours to the wayside, and I get all the attention and love right now because I'm the one that got activated and triggered first. You're like, okay, yeah, you're definitely further down the rabbit hole of drifting into your old parts and having troubles and issues and everything like that. But I love it. It makes me so happy to hear, because it's really actually beautiful. Like, we talk all the time on the podcast and on content and on social and everything like that, this whole idea of like, what does healing look like together?
Yeah.
And you guys just gave a perfect example of what it looks like together. Being able to dance back and forth in that space and in the nuance between, you know, my part needs this, my part needs that, and being able to facilitate and hold it for one another, but then also learning what that process looks like to do it for yourself. And Nick, your description of being able to like pick up that part of yourself and support yourself, you know, like we just had, obviously you guys are aware, and I know that people listen to the podcast and everything like that. Like, we've been navigating some really difficult times in our life right now. And, you know, there were parts of me that needed attention during the last couple of weeks when Stephanie's dealing with the death of her father and everything like that. And it's like, I can show up in the full capacity that I have as the adult and as her partner with all of my skill sets, all of my emotional, you know, capacity. I have all of my, what's the right word? I've just got all of me online to show up for her in those moments. But I'm also, because we had to fly back home to Utah, which is across the country. We have a whole bunch of stuff, meaning baggage and shit and trauma and things connected to that place because we were born and raised there. Like there's a reason why we picked everything up and left and moved across the country, right? But suddenly we had to go back to Utah, which meant I was going to have to deal with a bunch of stuff internally, and a bunch of things was going to come up for me. But because we have done so much work, it was very much like, okay, I can support that part of me that was going through what it was going through. I've got me, right? I've done enough work to support that part of me and still be able to be fully online and present for Stephanie. And I think that's what healing together looks like. It's being able to support your partner through activated moments and still be able to maintain your own, not just autonomy, but your own awareness, your own love, your own compassion, all of those kind of things.
Love that.
So you guys win. You guys won the award. It's amazing.
You do. You guys are amazing, honestly, and just sending so much love to you both with what you've been navigating. And yeah, I think when you said the word dance, like we were listening to one of your episodes with Tim. Is it Tim Fletcher? Have I got the name right?
Yes.
Oh, and like for the codependency healing, and then when you're doing it together, I've really struggled as someone that has to work so hard on codependency to like know what that dance is supposed to look and feel like, because I can tell sometimes at the start it was like I went from 0 to 100 of like overgiving and enmeshment to like, fuck off, that's your shit. Like, I've had to like come back to the middle. And like when he described that, like some days it will be like 90-10. And then sometimes you might be 50-50. And then I was like, oh God, I just needed someone to say that. Yeah. Because I want to be compassionate and on the days where you do need me to step in and help with that self-soothing. But I think as someone recovering from codependency, where there was very lack of responsibility on other people's parts, it's just nice to know that you are willing to go, I'm going to try first and I'm going to do my best to manage my system and my little me, like you were so beautifully describing, and then also know when to ask for help. It's been such a journey, and we're, like I say,
still doing it, and we'll no doubt for the rest of our lives. I think that is what it's all about. But I think we both relatively recently felt that the term self-leadership just kind of summed everything we've just been talking about, that we are complex beings just individually. When we bring another person into that mix, like the complexities just multiply hundreds of times because of the different versions of yourself that you can be. So I think honoring that multiple things can be true at the same time is really important as part of this. And I think that's allowed, we spoke about compassion earlier, I think that's also allowed some forgiveness and some release of shame, certainly that as a man I held on to a long time for behaviors I wasn't proud of because I made them mean something about who I am as a man. That's shame. Guilt is about the behavior itself, and that's an opportunity for change and growth. And I think it's shifting that, and this work has allowed us to do that, so that these instances in the now allow me to then go away and reflect and think about, how can I develop more compassion for the two-year-old self? Like, how can I go and actually, what I'm going to do now as well is I'm going to go and play. I'm just going to go and take a soccer ball out in the garden and just, do you know what I mean? Play with it for 10 minutes and just continue to kind of, to explore it, just be curious about what may work for me.
We're still like, I think being life and business partners, doing the work.
Yeah, that's an added
we didn't know, like no one warned us. What? Like, honestly, if someone had told us what this year was going to bring when we were toasting on New Year's Eve, I think I'd have gone into a full-blown panic attack. But
it's so much, isn't it?
Like, oh my God. Like, the universe has been like, here you go. How are you going to deal with this? Here you go. You serious about this business? Here you go. And like, oh my word. I think that's why we love the word agility as well, and like riding the waves, because some days, my God, it feels like that wave has just pummeled me and I don't know how to get up. And some days we are both flat on the bed of the ocean. Like, and neither one of us have that ability to step up. And we've seen so much loss. Like, we are wading through so much grief that our support network's gone. And, you know, it's just been,
it's growing in other areas. But
exactly that.
No one really talks that much about what that part of the healing journey is like, where you're discarding older parts of yourself, and therefore some of the friendships, relationships, communities that you've once existed in, that know you as those former versions of yourself, no longer align. And that's okay. But you have to decide whether you're still willing to be able to be in those environments and with those people or not. And what we found is actually that there's a mourning that takes place as part of the healing, and a loneliness sometimes that accompanies that transitional stage. So you're finding new people who are much more aligned with these evolving healing versions of yourself, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But then you're also grieving the kind of end of other types of relationships, and that happens, you know, at all levels. That's what we found anyway.
And there's family as well. There's you trying to work out where you still fit. Can you still fit in a family dynamic? You're pulling back the veil on so much. Like, for me, it was, I'm discovering so much codependency and dysfunctional dynamics, and then how do you slot back into that? And you know, I think there's the loss, but there's the grief, and there's the silences almost. There's almost like unresolved conflicts, like just little things dotted everywhere. And it's hard sometimes to know, like, what's the best thing to focus on? Like, what's the next best step forward? But all we can do is just keep digging into that self-compassion, keep digging into that self-nurturance and that gentleness, to be able to keep going. Because the amount of times we've gone, let's just close the business and move to a forest and never speak to anyone ever. Ever again. Like, done.
But then in the same day, you know, we'll have a client call, or we'll be part of a community where you're hearing other people's stories and you feel more connected to humans than you've ever felt before. That's the paradox and the of all of this. It all happens at the same time, almost, which is just incredible.
Are you one of the millions who have completely been swept up by the pickleball craze? The type of paddle you play with is a really important choice that absolutely affects your game. Element 6 pickleball paddles are perfect for the beginner or seasoned pro. Element 6 has created premium pickleball paddles. Don't be like us and just buy the first paddle you come across. Start out with an edge in your game. Start out with a lightweight, stylish. Of course, you want your paddle to look good and be USAPA approved, just in case, you know, you want to take it competitive or professional. Element 6 was founded by two brothers, and all of their products are manufactured right here in our own backyard in Tennessee. And with a wide range of options and free shipping and returns, there's nothing to lose. Right now, you can get yours. Go to stephandcraig.co, click on the Element 6 link, and enter Steph and Craig as a promo code to save you 10% on your order. And as a bonus, Element 6 is also going to send you a free gift with every order. Get yours today, and we'll see you on the courts.
Hey, everybody, you know how we're always talking about healing together on the podcast? Well, today's episode is brought to you by a new company that's going to help you do exactly that. They're called Our Ritual. Whether you're looking to grow individually or as a couple, Our Ritual offers up personalized pathways designed by their research experts and therapists, all with the focus to help you unlock a deeper connection with yourself as well as your partner. You get full access to not just the therapist, but video exercises and other tools that are going to help you on your path. All of that for far less than regular therapy. So if you're looking for a flexible and affordable way to level up your relationship, check out Our Ritual. Their website is ourritual.com. ourritual.com. Head over to ourritual.com right now and take their quiz. This is going to help you personalize the experience so that you get the care and help that you need the most. Our Ritual offers an alternative to traditional therapy and makes it more affordable, more accessible, and a much more engaging process through their user-friendly platform. Right now, listeners of the podcast can save 20% on their first month. Simply use the code StephandCraig20 at checkout. Again, that's StephandCraig20 and save 20%. Their website, one more time, is ourritual.com. ritual.com. You and your relationship are worth it.
Looking for the perfect gift for somebody you love? Try looking beyond material things and get them the most unique gift possible. An unforgettable custom song from Songfinch. Songfinch lets you create an original studio quality song inspired by your own life and the people that you love. It's completely unique, personal, and it lasts forever. Songfinch walks you through a simple 4-step process to create your original song. Just tell them who the song is for, provide them some personal details, and let them know the type of song you want. Then pick your favorite Songfinch artist or get matched with one, and they'll write it, record it, and produce your custom song in just 4 to 7 days. Go to stephandcraig.co, click on the Songfinch link, and enter promo code Steph and Craig for $20 off your custom song.
Yeah, right. It's the whole thing where, life does. It just continues to keep going all the time. So it's like you get to experience all the beautiful things and all the really shitty things all at the same time. You don't really get to pick and choose. But I have a question for you guys, because this is one of those things too that I think, I mean, we do a pretty good job discussing about it and talking about it on the podcast and kind of giving people a sense of what it is. But we have found over the course of our relationship, because, we fell in love and we lined up perfectly and we have like this beautiful honeymoon phase, and it's all the romance, it's all these kind of great things of the beginning phases of the relationship. And then the deeper the relationship goes and the longer we're together, we start to recognize how much we align with a lot of really positive, great things, right? We've got a lot of stuff that really syncs up and we are a really good match. But then our shadow pieces are also matched really, really well. Yeah. And the way that those kind of pop up and appear, and how my shadow parts are perfectly matched to trigger Stephanie and to spark the things inside of her that need to be is relative, right? But the things inside of her that are hopefully longing to be healed and yearning for light and love and attention. But the only way that they get brought forth sometimes is because of a shittier part of me, a shadow side of me, a behavior and action, from the past that kind of comes out. And so I'm curious if you guys have experienced some of that where, you uniquely, it's not just like your partner knows how to push your buttons, but it's like there's some weird dynamic that the universe plays out where it will put you in relationship with people that, you have to repeat these cycles in order for them to heal. Like that's the really clear way to say it, I think, is all of those wounds that we have from childhood and those parts of us that are wounded are just trying to heal, just trying to be validated and seen and loved. And so those parts get to pop up because of the stuff that happens in our relationship. And it's shitty stuff. It's hard stuff. It's the shadow side of things that we don't really like processing or going into, obviously, but it's kind of the only way that we have found that it happens.
Yeah.
I relate so hard to that.
Yeah.
Like for me, when we're little people growing up, we don't have responsibility or control over a lot of what happens to us. And I think that for me, like, as you were saying that, I was just reminded of that, of my most recent therapy experience, traditional talking therapy experience, around about the time we were meeting, when I was recounting relationships, jobs, friendships, and how like they'd all sort of never lasted to any kind of great degree. And my therapist just really beautifully reflected back to me that, and this was quite a big, long rant I'd been going on. And they said to me that, could they reflect something back? And I said, yes. And they reflected back that the only constant in all of this was me. So as an adult, it's my response. That's what really hit home. And I think that what we have, touch wood, is the capacity and the ability through our previous experiences of blowing everything up and moving on to the next thing. Through those big experiences, the realization that actually it's not just a responsibility, but it's the opportunity. Mm. And the opportunity to have the deepest relationship we can possibly have with another human being has to involve showing your shit.
Yeah.
And being seen in it, and hopefully not rejected because of it. Mm. And I think that's the big part, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, So my pattern was like 2 years, done, bye, out, move to another city. And it would be very honeymoon, sex would be great. And then it'd get to a point where I'd just pull back and I'd find all fault. Like, no, can't do this, leave. And with Nick, like, whenever I've been activated or I've had to dig deep into some of this work, like it's like this inner knowing that this isn't a toxic thing. When you can tell this is someone that's really pushing buttons in a very dangerous, toxic way. This is that person that's come into my life to highlight it. And we're like 6 years down the line, and it hasn't really, even in our darkest like moments where I'm like, get out, I don't need you anyway. I've never actually really believed I was ever going to leave. And I think for me, if I can, just speak to my experience, that I now know, and it's very, very, very common for adult children of alcoholics, that the intimacy is one of the biggest challenges. And I think like in other areas of my life, I can kind of get by. Oh my God. In a romantic relationship, it's like, I cannot hide. I can't keep running away. I can't keep slamming doors and like disappearing off. Like I know now I've got a very kind of disorganized attachment where sometimes it's anxious, but mostly it's avoidant. And like you've described, this more anxious attachment. And I think being able to allow some of these parts that are the most terrified of intimacy, not just sex, like you've said, sharing the darkest parts of me, that vulnerability. Like the biggest thing for me as a sign of a good relationship with Nick isn't the amount of times we're having sex, for example, it's you let Shelby come out. And that is incredible. Like I remember someone saying, like, if you find a relationship where you can start having adult tantrums, that's a sign you feel safe. When you in childhood have to push everything down and be good and like make sure you're like treading on eggshells, don't upset the apple cart. Like for me, the biggest sign of our health is that Shelby has been able to come out. I have to manage her. Like now we have to work very closely together because she can cause chaos and she can be really hurtful. And she's going to really activate the little you that's scared of being shouted at. So we've had to really kind of dance again with how much Shelby, like how much can she come into the relationship safely and be heard and seen, because she holds so much of the cards for our intimacy. So I think it's Nick's allowed that part to be seen, and it's allowed me to know that this is my stuff. I need to take responsibility for this relationship to be healthy and be fostered. I need to heal the wounds that are stopping me from true intimacy, because I've done that my entire life. And like allowing those parts of me to go, we deserve to be loved. Like we deserve to be seen. Like there's nothing wrong with me. Like that's been a game changer for me personally.
Yeah. And we touched earlier in the conversation about those kind of more toxic masculine traits, something which doesn't get talked enough about, I think, as men is in terms of my sexuality, that my relationship with things like porn, and that becomes a self-soothing thing as I'm growing up, and therefore a kind of a go-to in times of stress that actually has nothing to do with sex, and being able to voice that as I'm voicing to you now, because Jess has been able to hold that and not judge me for it. And this is something I've actively worked on to recognize and deal with. And I think it's so common, like in almost every male client I work with, it's something that comes up, these shame parts, these shadow parts, where there's the feeling of, and I use the word mindfully, like terror. There's a terror associated with sharing those parts of yourself, especially if you're doing it for the first time. It's a practice like everything else, isn't it? But I think, so that was a really, both between the two, it was a really long way of answering your question. But yes, we absolutely, that's a big part of how our relationship is continuing to develop, to show each other the worst sides of ourselves. Because as you said, it's almost like there's some kind of design behind all of this, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah, I think we're constantly recalibrating. I like to use that word of like, I'm growing in my own way at different kind of pace. You're doing the work on yourself. So you're constantly growing and evolving. And it's like, you have to just keep trying to recalibrate and keep trying to come together. That's for us in friendships and families, whatever, any kind of connection. But yeah, it's really important that we recognize that's actually part of the process. And when it feels really fragmented and that it's not, something's not fitting, it's okay. We can just, focus on that calibration once more.
It's so freeing when you come through the other side of it. Like somatically, the weight, you feel the weight has been lifted.
Yeah.
Because you've been seen and witnessed in that experience, and you've shared it. Like that is, for me, like such a deep level of intimacy.
Yeah.
If that far more intimate than anything you could do physically, I believe.
I loved, I've got to just say as well, when you guys shared on one of the podcasts about the use of we,
yeah.
I was like, yeah. Like that was so activating for me when Nick would say we need, and I'm like, no. And like, just when we notice these little things, own it, and kind of like compassionately say, look, can we change some of the language here, because this doesn't feel like this is helpful. So thank you, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's something I still struggle with all the time, where I will constantly be in conversation with people. We'll talk about it on the podcast all the time, and I will just refer to Stephanie and I as this individual singular thing, the we, that's, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And I'm like, okay, hold on a minute. I think these thoughts. Stephanie thinks those thoughts. Sometimes our thoughts and our experiences align, but we're two separate people. And that's really hard for me when it comes to the codependency and the enmeshment and all of those kind of things. I mean, that's my jam. That's like my bread and butter. That's where I feel the safest, is when I'm completely blended with somebody and there's no like sign from where I end and they, begin. Yeah. That's where I feel the safest. And it's 100% connected and correlated to childhood. And it's really terrible and it's really toxic and it's not good for healthy relationships. But I wanted to mention, you guys were talking about, first off, Nick, I want to acknowledge I have that same thing when it comes to like porn and sex and everything like that becomes a way to self-soothe. And it's some of my earliest coping mechanisms from childhood, unfortunately. But it's one of the earliest ways that I did exactly that, just soothe whatever I was going through and experiencing. And it has been such a tumultuous thing to navigate over the course of my life because of all the shame that is kind of surrounded by it. I grew up in a culture and in a community that was very, it was the Mormon church. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that religion or not, but it's not one that, it's not a terrible religion, but it's not a great religion. And it was very shame-based and it was terrible. But as you were talking and communicating or saying all of those things, I was thinking about how kind of, it's sad because I have this part of me, like the perfect idealistic version of Craig as a young child, just wide-eyed and beautiful and, innocent. And then things happen to me and I have to figure out how to get my needs met. All of those maladaptive ways that we kind of get our needs met and that we kind of take care of ourselves. And the vast majority of all of those things were things that I carry shame for. They're things that I had to hide, things that I felt like I had to keep hidden, right? And because it was early, it was pornography, and then it was self-harm, and it's binge eating, and it's, adrenaline seeking. It's all of these things and all of these actions and behaviors that I had over the course of my life. And then slowly it's like being able to articulate those and share those with Stephanie and having her witness those and see those, even though there's like a version of her in our relationship that has had to experience the fallout of some of those behaviors and had to go through and deal with some of the ramifications of that stuff as an adult, right? And yet still be able to hold those. It's like you said earlier too, Nick, where it's like two things can be, right at the same time. And it's being able to hold those two things at the same time of seeing the individual and the behavior and the action and the toxicity and the terribleness of it, but then also seeing the little kid where it came from. And that part, I think, is what is really, really important for healthy long-term relationships, is being able to see past the action and the behavior and see where it actually originated and started from. And it's not to say that all behavior and all actions and everything like that have some, early start in early childhood, but at least for us, that's what it's really felt like. And I say it's not all behaviors, but I mean, the reality is the things that people are doing that cause problems in relationships today typically have their roots in childhood and in those maladaptive coping mechanisms that we all tried to figure out because we didn't have anybody else teaching us or showing us healthy ways to do it. So I feel like I'm rambling, babe. Say something. I'm uncomfortable.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, you're so cute. I wanted to go back for a little bit because I'm just sitting here and I'm loving this conversation between us. And Jess, I am really identifying with you a lot. There's so much you were saying that I feel like if we had those cards, I could go up here like, me too, me too, me too. You know, there's so much of it.
Teenage Steph has been so much fun in the last little while. Teenage Steph got a new car this year. And she's driving around in her new teenage Steph car, and it's so much fun.
So very much. And I was actually going to bring it back to the teenage self part because there's so much time, especially like on this journey where we're really getting connected to, you know, how old am I in this place? And like, you know, what part of me is feeling this? What does this part of me need and going through? But you said something that is like, who am I talking to right now? Who am I yelling at? Who am I mad at? And that was that's like next level question right there. Who am I talking to right now? And I would love it if you could speak a little more to that on how that that degree of accountability came into your space and how you're practicing that.
Yeah. So coming back to internal family systems, like the practice of understanding the parts of ourselves that were formed to protect us so it was IFS and it was mother wound work. So I was really drawn to understanding the mother wound because I'm an empowerment coach. I work a lot with women, and I'm just fascinated from like the mother wound from the patriarchal kind of way, but also the wounds that we will have from our own mums. And those two areas got me to understand that my teenager plays such a huge part. And I'd focused up until that point on like my inner child, like very, very, very young. But being able to connect with Shelby and the different parts of me at different ages in a setting, whether it's one-on-one or group, where I let them speak, was a game changer. Because what my brain will automatically do is just cognitively process it. It will I can't think of the word, compartmentalize it. If I actually can be in almost like a meditative state with myself and just see who wants to say something here, who's the most activated here in this situation, what do they want to say? Like, yeah, it's been fascinating. And it's through that practice that I've been able to get to that question, who am I actually talking to? Because until I actually identified that this wasn't just me, these voices aren't just me, they're actually voices of different sub-personalities of me at different ages that are kind of frozen in time. Like I can tell with Shelby, she's like teenager, she's like the biggest bullshit detector. And she's got a lot she wants to say to my parents, a lot. But she's also got a lot to say about society and different leaders. And it's like, she's got so much to say. So in answer to the question, I think the more I tune in and actually not just cognitively learn about her and put it on paper and journal about it, but actually spend time in there, like I can tell the different nuances of voices, the tones, the emotion attached to what they're saying. And from that can gauge, like, it doesn't just come automatically. Like Nick had to bugger off and I was in the bath tapping and I was like, oh shit, I'm screaming at dad. Like, so I have to have the space to go in and listen and hear what she's saying. So when she's going, I am sick to death of managing adult men's emotions. I was like, ooh, and even as I say it, my neck and my shoulders have gone so tight, because that's where she lives. And that's the weight that she feels she carries in this world. And like, so understanding what the dialogue is and what their problems are and the tone and the emotion, then I can be like, who are they really talking to? And let her, I might never say these things to who they're angry at. I might never ever have that actual live conversation. But by letting her or them have a voice, just can calm down what's going on in here, and just gives me a little bit more space and a little less responsibility. So yeah, it's definitely come with like spaces where I felt vulnerable. I can be vulnerable enough to tap into that. And it's been the right practitioners that I've felt safe enough to do that with, because old me would have been like, nah, I don't need to do that. I'll just read the book. But actually being able to practically meet these parts of me and for them to feel safe with me, that's the key. Because that Shelby, that angry voice that was so angry at my dad, they never were able to talk at that age. Shelby was not there when I was younger. Shelby's come out now, I'm healing and I can see the truth. So like that me at that age was like, oh, what do you need? Oh, I'm going to look after you. Oh, you know, whereas actually like Shelby's a really beautiful sign of the healing and actually is saying the truth of what what they really feel about my childhood. So yeah, I hope does that explain it? It's a kind of long.
You did such a good job. Such a good job. And like, I'm just resonating with that so deeply. When my inner teenager started to come out, first of all, she was a surprise to me because I wasn't prepared for her. I wasn't prepared for everything that she brought. And that is also like, there's such a large amount of shame and responsibility that was never meant for me to carry as a child that I had, that I didn't even acknowledge the teenager part. What I did was also blame her for everything and her choices. So when she started coming out, I wasn't like, I'm so happy you're here. It was like, what the fuck are you doing here? You know, we did not meet on a level playing field. We had our own battles to get through. And then to allow that space to where I started to see her and listen to her and love her and celebrate her. That's how that healing with me had to start. I needed to validate her so much and just suddenly start to champion her and hear her and be like, you were right. You were right. You were right. You were so right. And that has created more peace and more space, and realizing a lot of the things that I have been mad at, like Craig's also got the best of me in these ones. You know, a lot of my stuff he's had, and I'm being sarcastic. Absolutely.
I have gotten the best of you.
You have gotten the best of me. But things that triggered that part of me that I could not separate between what I was actually yelling at, what I was actually feeling hurt and afraid of against him. And I just projected it onto, it is this person now, and I have to defend myself or whoever else is around against this person. You know, it was like this film came over, and I didn't see that I wasn't Craig that I was upset with until a lot of that. And there's still times when I'm unwinding that. There's still times where I can't see that who I'm afraid of or who I'm angry with isn't actually the person that I'm talking to. That's a process, but having that awareness has been such a shift, and it's created space. There's times, like you mentioned earlier, where you've got Nick's inner child coming out and he needs reassurance and your teenager is not. And I couldn't meet that. Craig would be like, I'm 4 right now. And I could not meet him. And now if he's like, I'm 4 right now, I need to know that I'm loved and I'm safe. And, you know, this part, I can take a breath and be able to show up in that space because I can see him instead of who I'm projecting onto him. And that took so much time. So I love how detailed you went with it. Thank you. I see you so much in that space.
No, I see you. I wish our teenagers could hang out in your car.
Right. Yes.
That'd be so cool. Oh, no, I think
it's such a fun car. sometimes I feel like we're teenagers cruising around in it, because when I was a kid growing up, I oftentimes would be sitting in the passenger seat of my girlfriend's cars. And it's so fun cruising around in the car with Steph, because she's, we're playing fun music and she's driving. And anyways, yeah, that's fun.
I love that.
I want to ask you guys, where are you? Because like we talked earlier or mentioned earlier, it's always just this perpetual growth process, right? Healing is just this journey that goes on and on and on and on and on. Where are you guys finding your edge right now? Like, what are some of the areas that you guys are butting up against that are really challenging you? And kind of, maybe, because I think the same thing, well, for me, I'll have like, something comes into my space and IFS is a big one that has stuck around for a really, really long time. Like, we've been fans of IFS for a really long time. It's how we process a lot of things. It's how we view a lot of things. It's the verbiage and the way that we talk about a lot of stuff. But it's like, I'll have some new technique or some new idea or some new part of me, or, whatever it might be, something comes up, and then I'm working with that energy and I'm trying to heal that part. And then there's always like these outer parts that it's like the edge of growth, and then the space that's unknown after that fact, right? I think that when it comes to this process of healing, it very much is this, like, we don't know what's going to happen next. I think I have a really good sense of, okay, I've unpacked all of my baggage, right? There might be a spare suitcase somewhere, hidden somewhere, that I haven't been able to locate yet, and it's going to make an appearance in the final act or something. But by and large, I feel like I've got a good understanding of all of my shit at this point. And now it's just going through the deepening layers of how it's all interconnected and interwoven with things. But every now and then we do butt up against, well, I didn't see that one coming, or here's another area that it's like, okay, eventually I'm going to have to start looking at that, and I don't really want to. So where's the edge for you guys right now in the space of not just your individual work, but also in the space of kind of healing together in the relationship?
So one of the things that I think we both can struggle with, me definitely, is like, because we're doing the work and we're working in the work. Like, there's no respite. And there's a part of me definitely gets addicted to the work. And sometimes, have to remind ourselves, we leapt out of the corporate world to create this business for freedom. And like, what parts are like almost continuing to drive burnout and some of the old patterns of just like, where can we live? Like, when do we stop talking about the work? When do we stop having that conversation in the day? Like, we try with the turning off the phones, but then we can still talk about the work, right? And
I think for me, I really hear you with that 100%. And we're still learning how to be Nick and Jess, and how to be Nick and Jess, the coaches that are co-founders and business owners. And things do get enmeshed. Like, we're the king and queen, as I'm sure you view yourselves as well, of that enmeshment.
Yeah.
So it's that uncoupling
boundaries, isn't it?
And thinking about it. I think for me, the thing I struggle with the most is understanding what is some discomfort, pain, difficulty, challenge that I am feeling because it's part of healing and growth and that part of stepping into that unknown. But what is the old narrative, maybe that church-based narrative of suffering is good and worthy, and poverty is, don't rise above your station, all of those messages. And sometimes it can be difficult for me to understand which is which. That's something which has occurred to me quite recently. Hang on, I'm suffering unnecessarily here. And I'm holding myself back and keeping myself small in a way that I thought I was testing the water from a growth perspective, but actually it's not. It's an old narrative that's kind of sneaked around the back.
Yeah. And oh my God, it's so true. Like, what I would genuinely love for us right now was to like live.
Yeah.
Live it, live and breathe it. not overthink it. Like, I'm so reactive as a person. Like, I've got so many things dangling, right, that could drop with a bomb, or it could be okay. I don't know. I want to control everything. Sometimes I want to grip on to like the branches and know what's going to happen. And, you know, I had my IFS coach session today, and it was, very much around just how can I flow? Like, how can I flow with just some of the grief that's been coming my way? Like, how can I let go of the grip and lean into that slowness and that nurturing and that protection, and not think about like, how am I going to sort all of this? How am I going to find a solution? And I mentioned earlier about like unresolved conflicts and silences and things dropping away, and there's the desperate need inside to get everything sorted, and we've got business stuff like problems that are just dangling, and actually it's like, how do I just release the grip and just focus on the glimmers and living and being Jess and Nick and just I think, feeling it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
You used the metaphor, Craig, of suitcases. And I think it is actually sometimes just saying, like, I'm going to put suitcases underneath the bed.
They're going in there.
And I know they're there, and I can get them out and try and choose and take a bit more kind of ownership and bring some compassion to the fact that actually you've got to live as well.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind, you know, the business is only 18 months old in its current form. So we're still quite new at this. Like, I consider myself a late bloomer, you know, with everything we've spoken about. So I think it's what I'm excited about is I feel that part of our life is just beginning, where it's like, okay, hang on, we don't have to tackle and heal every single thing that comes up every time it comes up. So that self-awareness is something new. I think is like, okay, I'm aware of this, but I'm going to choose when I'm going to focus on it, because actually the self-awareness will carry me through, and I've got, frankly, other things to think about and spend time on and prioritize, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I heard this recently on a podcast, and we've talked about it, and it's something that we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis. And I don't remember who said it. And it's always terrible because we hear so much stuff and we watch so much stuff that it's hard to know, I don't remember where this one came from, but it was just a reminder that you're not going to heal it all in this lifetime. Like, you're not going to heal it all. And just knowing that, like, it hit in such a way at the moment, and it really landed for Stephanie, because it is like this, I got to get through it all. I got to heal it all. I want to be able to live the best life that I possibly can live. And in order for me to do that, because the way that it has been is by healing, it is, my life is the way that it is today. And I'm really grateful for it. And I love my life. And I'm so happy where I'm at in life. And the reason that I feel that that's the life that I have is because I've been able to heal this shit, is because I've been able to unpack it and look at it and process it, right? Those things that used to fuck up my life aren't fucking my life up anymore. So that makes sense to me, where it's like, okay, I keep healing, life's going to keep getting better and better. And it's the reminder of like, oh yeah, I'm not going to heal it all. I'm just not. Like, that's just the reality of life, right? There's too much stuff. And the truth of it is, I don't think that we're supposed to heal it all. Like, I don't think that that's even really the goal or the journey, or, it's not even that's not the experience. And I have to remember that. But it's really fucking hard, because I too will get addicted to it, Jess, where we very much is just like, we got to keep going. How much deeper can I go? I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to go deeper. I want to peel back as many layers as possible to get to the very bottom of the ocean. And then even then, I'm going to start digging a little bit. I bet there's some more stuff down here, baby. We got to find more shadow and figure out what's going on. And it becomes this, like, it just becomes too much. And so that too is something that we've been really trying to lean into this year in the last little bit, of just being really happy with where we're at, recognizing that we arrived. Like, this is it. We made it. Like, we finally made it. We made it to a point where we live in a loving, supportive home with a loving, supportive partner that, the relationship that we've been able to cultivate and create together is a relationship that we've never seen before. We don't have an example of it that we can ever draw from. And our home and our house that we live in, like, it's not just, not the house and the structure, but the home is a place now that is loving and safe and we can, it's just a house that we've never had before. Neither one of us have ever been in this type of relationship. Neither one of us have ever lived a life this way. And that sometimes I think is important to remember. I know I need to remember it more often, because we do get so caught up in all the shit that life throws at us and all the things that we have to do.
Yeah.
That's so
we made it, babe.
We made it.
Love that.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that. Like, literally parts of me felt so needed to hear that. Because I think subconsciously parts of me will be in the driving seat that, they're chasing a bit of chaos. They want to find something they can get angry at, and they want to kind of be in the darkness instead of like cultivating that resilience for the light. And in the slowness and in the calm and in the living is my version of healing, because that's what I didn't get for so long. So thank you. I
was reflecting on that part of me, like kind of going into the 30s, when I did think healing was a destination. I will get better. I'll fix the things that are wrong with me. And that, when I've done that, that will allow me to really show up in the world.
I'll be lovable.
In all my authenticity and glory. And then actually in that part of my life, I wasn't really doing anything at all because of the narrative that I had about myself. So I agree. I think perspective is so important, and we get to choose, as many perspectives as we give ourselves the freedom and privilege to experience. Yeah. That's what I love about it. So I love what you said. That was amazing.
You guys are awesome.
Yes.
We've been so excited for this interview. So grateful for your time. You two are just incredible and amazing. You're welcome back on the podcast anytime. Like, there's a standing invitation if you guys ever want to come back, if you've got stuff you want to promote. I mean, even if you just want to fucking hang out and bullshit, we're totally down. You two are awesome. This has been wonderful.
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy I got to meet you both.
Ditto. Thank you for everything you do in the world. This podcast is absolutely incredible. And we cannot stress enough to meet people doing the work together and having that connection. I just wish you guys weren't the other side of the world, but we can get over that. But, it's just so lovely. It's having real conversations about the messiness is so important to us. So thank you for sharing parts of you as well.
Yeah, I feel really warm inside right now.
I know.
I might have a happy cry.
Be with the glimmers. We'll have a messy cry.
What's the best way for people to find you guys? What do you guys have coming up that you'd like to share? Amazing.
So we are mostly on Instagram. So our business is at the_3E_space. Our 3 E's standing for explore, energize, and empower, and kind of encompasses everything we do within the world. So that's the company, the 3E Space, and the website's www.the3espace.com. But we've got our own individual handles. So I am Jess Frost.
And I am at Nick Edgar Coaching.
Yeah. So we have like lots of different events. I'm not sure when this will go out and what will have been, but if you kind of follow the Instagram, we're constantly, whether it's doing like live breathwork sessions, online breathwork sessions, like for example, we're doing a workshop tomorrow on shame. We are constantly taking applications for our one-to-one. So we work with people one-to-one for 6 months to reclaim themselves with self-leadership. You can work with either one or both of us. And then, we work with organisations, workplaces, schools. So we help the head teachers and leaders to really own that self-leadership and improve psychological safety, communication, just connection. Have I missed anything?
No, you nailed it.
Have I? So
nailed it.
Come and hang. We just love the connection, and actually we've really loved social media and what it offers for that, because you get to meet people like you guys and get to connect with people all over the world. So whatever people need, we make as well. So hit us up, let us know what you need support with, and we'll create an event for it, because we love it. So thank you so much.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. We'll be sure to share it all down in the show notes, so the links are there for everybody. And we end every episode with
expect the best,
plan for the greatest.
Yes, I love that. You guys are amazing.
Wait and see, you and me, we were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights. things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey, but we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.